Hello everyone. This is week 4 and the last in the June set, and today I'm going to demonstrate glazing shadows onto a white rose. I know it looks like I've got a lot of colours out, but I am actually going to try to put as much colour into the rose as I can and into the different shadows that I see. But if you look carefully at a white flower, you will see many colours and shadows within the petals, and I want to try and capture all of those things and show you that you can actually put quite a bit of colour into a white flower to keep it interesting and nice to look at, but it will still hopefully remain a white flower. I'm going to use the glazing technique to glaze over some cast shadows at the end, and obviously shadows can change, so my idea this week is here's my rose. Now I can't keep it where you can see it all the time because that's the one I'm painting. And I haven't, because I'm landscape today, I haven't got the space to show that as well without going too far away from the painting, and you wouldn't see so well. So obviously the shadows are going to change. So my idea for this week, especially because we're painting shadows, is to find your subject and take a photograph of it, sitting in the position that you're actually going to see it when you paint. Okay, albeit that's not a great photo. I think my printer was not playing up the way it should have done on that occasion, but at least you're getting the idea of what I mean. So if you have that photograph as well, it's going to show up the cast shadows for you and all the other shadows that you might see between the petals to define the different shapes. You'll see them more easily on a photograph, and especially if you've got a lot to do and the shadows are going to change, or if you're painting outside. If you've got that photograph and you've captured your drawing, then you can be reminded all the time as to where those shadows are if you have that photograph, okay? So where I'm at the moment with this is I've popped a background around already using the glazing technique by putting a background down and allowing it to dry, and then painting over the top of it to create various different shapes. I didn't want to get very strong and heavy with the leaves as it's a white flower, and the concentration today I want to be on the flower. Okay, so here goes. In my flower I can actually see quite a lot of yellow in the centre, so I've popped that in and allowed it to dry first. I haven't softened my drawing, so hopefully you can still see some of it. But my idea is to keep it lighter this side, which is what I can see today on my flower, and deeper in shadow under here. I'm going to start off by putting little soft edge shadows in between the petals to define the various shapes, and then wait for it to dry and glaze over any other shadows that I see at the very end. Okay, so further away in my flower, the shadows are going to be bluer, and they're going to get warmer towards the front of my flower, in the centre, and where all the light is going to be. So I'm going to start off by just putting all the little soft shadows in first, using a mixture of cobalt blue and Windsor Violet. I'll obviously have to stop and start because there's a lot to do. And the most important aspect of this today is to show you the way to actually paint over some cast shadow at the end of the painting. So I'm keeping that little edge up there light because it's folded over and there's light catching on the top of it. Now, big tip, if you've got a lot of shadows to paint, which obviously in this I have, because it's a many-petaled flower, you need to keep your shadows pretty. I'm not so fond of just grey. I would like to always mix a grey if I see my shadows as grey, but to mix a grey that's a prettier grey with maybe showing quite a bit of purple in it or something. Okay, these are all the little soft shadows that I'm putting in first. And you can work wet on wet, which is going to give you a lovely soft edge wherever you may think you need that. It's a little bit more purple in that shadow. Softening that edge away. Just so long as you leave some of your petals, parts of your petals, white paper, then it's still going to be a white flower, even though you're putting in a lot of shadow, okay? I'm trying to remember that my colour will dry up lighter when it's dry. I'm keeping some of these shadows really quite light because the cast shadows are going to go over the top. There are lots of cast shadows because there are lots of petals, one showing and casting a shadow onto the next. So I'm trying to be quite realistic in that respect, but actually not that realistic in the colours I'm using. I'm actually emphasising the shadow colours a little bit more than I'm actually seeing them today, because I want to keep them pretty and I want to show you that you can put more colour in. So there's a little bit of pink going on in there. So that's a deep shadow. And it's changing colour a little bit because I put at the top here a little bit of a brighter yellow to try and bring the sunshine in a little bit onto the work. I went over that edge of that petal there, so I'm just actually removing that a little bit with my... I am using a large brush, but if you feel that you're going to be happier with a smaller brush, then that's fine. This has got a good point and is holding quite a lot of water, so you may find it easier to paint with a smaller brush. So that the shadows here are getting slightly warmer because they're coming further into the centre of the flower. So a little bit more purple with it, or touches of pink. Keeping an eye on the work or on the subject all the time, looking at the subject more in many ways than I'm looking at the work. I have got my reference photograph for the cast shadows if I feel I need it and the light's changed by the time I get to that. You can see it, hopefully you can see that it's starting to take shape now. So these are the little soft edge petals going in. So I think I'm going to stop and do lots more and then work on some here, and then I can work on the cast shadows later and still have time to do that. Right, I've painted lots of these little soft shadows in and added a bit more colour where I felt it should be and where I could see it. I want to put a little bit more blue into my shadows under here, so getting a bit more cobalt out. Tiny little touch of the purple with it, I think, just to make it slightly greyer, but there are quite a lot of shadows to deal with this side. The little shadows that are going to give the shape to the petals. So, not a good idea to judge at this point. Just keep on painting. Not necessarily looking at your picture as a whole. Don't know what that means. Ignoring that. Get the music back on again now too. Make sure you've got very clean water all the time and a nice dry towel. Have 2 pots of water going on so that you wash your brush in one and mix up your paint with another, the clean one, because paint can actually stay in your brush and you'll get, when painting a flower of this kind, a very light flower, you don't want any contamination between colours. So make sure you're cleaning your brush and shaping it up all the time. Actually, there's a little bit more warmth in this petal under here. So I've popped a little bit of my pink into the shadow colour. It gets quite strong at the edges on this one. Very little white showing in that one at all. It's more or less in complete shadow underneath all the other petals. So that's the sort of thing that's going to give your pictures a little bit more body, a little bit more interest, and some reality as well. Dropping a bit more depth into there, working wet on wet to get the shape. Right, there's a big petal here that's just got some shadow at the tip, but it has got cast shadow on, which will have to go on later. They're very fleshy petals, and so a little bit of texture going on is always helpful. So dropping water back on sometimes just to create some texture helps to create that fleshy appearance. Dropping little bits of colour on there. Because it's at the front, I can actually see it better, and I can see the texture more. But it's light under there. But again, quite a strong shadowed petal here. Shadowed more one side than the other. You don't have to choose a rose that has this many petals if you can find one that's got fewer, or any flower that's got fewer petals if you're not used to painting anything quite as complicated as this. Go for something simpler and see how you get on before going on to something else that's, you know, more complicated. Right. There's a lot of shadow there, so that's a cast shadow, just need some into here. Sitting outside in the sunshine and painting will also help you to see shadows a lot better. So that's another option with our lovely weather. It's nice to paint outside. It's getting more light around here now, and with these petals that are more on top of the others. So going for warmer colour with the purple. It's a little dip in that one. Lots of shadow in this one. That's all cast shadow there. Right, so getting there. I haven't used the hairdryer. I'm trying not to use the hairdryer, although I guess I may have to. Just for this demo, but I will be trying not to use it unless I have to, because it can dull the paint. And mixing your colours actually on the paper helps to give a nice vibrant effect. I've got little light mixes going on for my glazes. Right, I think I'm just about there, so I'll have to just stop and allow this to dry, and then I'll put the cast shadows in and see how that turns out, and hopefully it'll still be a white flower. Okay, my rose is dry. It's better if you can leave it to dry naturally. I did quickly put the hairdryer on it, so I hope it won't have affected the masking fluid, which obviously we know it doesn't really like. And I've mixed up a warm shadow with lots of blue and some purple, and a warmer shadow with that same mix with a little touch of pink in it. So I'm actually now going to have a look and work through the whole painting, putting in my cast shadows, and I will be glazing obviously over the top of some of the shadows that I've already popped in, so it will be actually deepening those colours. And then this shadow comes all the way around here. So touching it as little as possible. I've gone for a slightly smaller brush because some of my shadows that I've got to put in are in fact quite small. So it's going to help me to get the shape that I need. But this cast shadow goes all the way over here. Slightly more purple shadow here. Remembering it will dry lighter, and being brave. A little tiny bit there. These shadows are being cast from the petals that are sitting around, or leaves. But actually popping this in is going to make the whites look whiter. So this is glazing some shadows over the top. And they take on all sorts of different shapes, as you can see. And they're generally speaking smooth-edged. This is why I'm trying not to touch the edge more times than I actually have to. Right. There's a lot of cast shadow in this one. I haven't put the centre in yet, so that's going to go in last. Now the cast shadows tend to be stopping around here because there is more shadow this side. But I've got one here. I'm just going to put a little bit more paint out. Takes concentration. A little bit here, not too much. Some under here. You see how it's modifying the colours underneath, which is something we've talked about with glazing in the past weeks. A little bit here, from that petal onto that one. A little bit under there, It's more this side than you first might think, because it's now I'm really concentrating on it, I can see it all better. A little bit on this little petal that's getting in the way of the stamens. I thought I'd leave that in, sometimes I'd pick it out. There's a big shadow here. And here. Now this has got a strange shape to it. Right. And it comes all the way through here. Obviously, oops, I moved the flower. So obviously, if you don't want to see all of these colours in your picture, in your flower that you may paint, just stick with one or two colours and make it simpler for yourself. Mix up a pretty grey and just stick with that. Just so long as it's a good colour, it's going to work. Right, I've got a little bit stronger with the shadow colour this side because it's stronger shadow. And it comes all the way over here. And makes this shape here. Right over the top. And under here. Trying to sit in one position all the time as well. Every time you move, you see it differently. So try not to move around too much. Right, I think that's just about it. I think I prefer the blue shadow to the purple one, but purple is complementary to the yellow that's going on in the flower. But you can choose to just use blue if you wish. Okay, That's all I'm going to do, I think. I think I've just about put every cast shadow in that I can see. I hope you can see it all okay, and I hope it dries up okay. It's still looking like a white flower, but now I need to bring the centre up, which will make a nice difference. Mustn't go over that petal. Using the tip of my brush, and this is burnt sienna. You can use a fairly dry paint. That was a little bit wet. There's a little bit of masking fluid on there as well to create the shape of some of the little stamens. It's got a dark colour in here, so I've put a little bit of the purple with that. Mix that I was using there, burnt sienna. It needs to dry just a tiny bit really, but what I would do now is to put a little bit of Windsor blue on the top of those stamens, just to create some deeper shadow. And if you want to be nice and loose with your centre, you can drop little touches of water on as well, but I think it's all right like that really today. But that needs to dry before taking the masking off, so I may just risk the hair drying. There we are, centre finished off. Can then go back and put a few more harder little spots of the burnt sienna in if you feel you want to bring it out a little bit more, but that's fine. You can also go back and define some of the shapes between some of the petals that you feel need a little bit more shadow to create better shapes. But in fact, you know, the less you touch it, as always, the better really. So maybe if it's looking good, leave it. Little bit hurried, but that's the process, and I hope you'll have a try and find a nice white flower to paint some shadows, either inside or out. Next week I'm going to start a new set, being July, and I'll continue with flowers, but I'm going to be demonstrating the loose and free painting of flowers. Lots more coming now. The dog roses are on the way, and various other lovely flowers. I've got foxgloves, hollyhocks will be here soon. So it's not really a good time to stop painting flowers, but I can show you different techniques, and I'm going to go with the loose and free. Okay, have a good week, and I look forward to seeing your shadows. Take care. Bye.